Thank you very much, Rana. We should just note that without a novice mentoring program, up to 40% of teachers can leave in the first 2 years of teaching. So the novice mentoring program is not something additional to any educational system. Are you ready? Now we will hear from Nashwa. She will talk about school and society, spaces for citizenship construction.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm really happy all of you were able to make it. So before starting my topic, I would like to introduce to you how it came up, how I reached this idea for this thesis. I had lots of ideas in my mind. I thought of having a thesis about student empowerment. Then I thought about having a thesis about choices of students. To what extent are students given agency to make about change? I thought of cultural pedagogy, I thought of critical thinking, I thought of civic action. And then I was grateful to have one topic that embraced all of this. And this was school and society, spaces for citizenship construction. I'm very blessed to have Dr. Malak Zarouk as an advisor throughout courses, throughout the thesis. I'll keep the acknowledgements at the end, I'm just highlighting. I'm also very blessed to have Dr. Dagwa as a leader and a professor throughout the courses. So very quickly, I'll move to an introduction. In 2009, there has been a study on 15,000 of the youth, and it showed that the youth are very poorly civically engaged, and also showed that the literature on citizenship education, or maybe civic education, focuses on loyalty and obedience. Surprisingly, something happened in 2011, which was totally surprising. A revolution happened, and it was led by the youth. Although the studies say that they were not really going to be engaged. This revolution, of course, as you know, was asking for relative freedom and social justice, and many spaces were opened for action, starting with cleaning up, moving to national political movements. So something which is very critical, there has to be changes in the educational system in order to have a sustainable change. So many scholars focus on this issue since 2012, and these citizens not only need to know rights and obligations, but they also need to be committed and also need to be engaged. Also, other scholars have focused on the idea that if such programs are not present, then we have a problem in the schools where there are authoritarian values, there is no participation in decision making, there is no, an issue with the freedom of speech. So I thought of exploring the topic of the political socialization of youth. So previously the literature has shown that the students, or the youth generally speaking, are being influenced by parents and schools. This was the first literature, the earlier literature. Later on, further on, literature showed that they were influenced by peers and the mass media. And in the Egyptian context, there has been lots of studies, especially by Linda Herrera, showing that they are being influenced by the revolution and the social media. So I thought of, instead of examining the textbooks, why don't I go and listen to the voices of the students? And why don't I go and explore the narratives being held at the schools? And why don't I explore the effects of the external factors? So the first question is, of my study, what notions of citizenship are being promoted by various types of schooling? I explored not only one school, I went to 4 schools: a public school, an experimental school, a private school, and an international school. I thought of doing so because these schools are different types, of course, and also of different socioeconomic levels. Secondly, I thought of exploring the perceptions of students. And finally, the last question, I'm exploring the effects of various external socializing agents, family, peer, media, and the daily social influence. So this is Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire is a very well-known Brazilian educator who's focused on critical pedagogy. He was talking about critical consciousness, and he explained it as learning to perceive the realities, political, social, economic, and also taking action. So in order for a citizen or a person to be performing critical consciousness, not only he or she will be able to perceive what's going on, but also take action. And then he says there are 3 levels of consciousness: magical, naive, critical. Okay? So the magical is a person who, when there's a problem, this person will go and then either he or she won't sense the problems, or they'll say, well, yani, this is luck or chance or God's will. So this is the magical consciousness. The second type, someone who will blame individuals. So this person will say, well, the problem is with the people. People are not obeying the rules. The third person will actually go on and analyze the causes within the system and look at the structural, systemic explanations. So now I'll take you to a very quick journey in my literature review. It took me like 50 pages, but here I'll only show 5 slides. For the sake of the time, maybe if you have more time, I'll go. So the first scholar is Banks. He's saying that there are 4 kinds of citizens. The first kind is the legal. Someone who is legally a citizen, but he or she does not participate in the political system. Secondly, the minimal citizen, someone who votes. The third kind, active, someone who is active, but however this person is active within the current system. The fourth kind is the transformative citizen, someone who will actualize the values beyond those of conventional thought. Another scholar, or 2 scholars, I really appreciate their paper or their theory, Westheimer and Kami in 2004, they say there are 3 kinds of citizens. All of them are good citizens, but they behave differently. So the first kind is the person responsible. This person would actually work hardly, pay taxes, obey laws, and volunteers. So this person focuses on good character and is law-abiding. The second person is really focusing on providing care, promoting economic development, taking practice in environmental issues. So again, this is a little bit similar to the active, where this citizen participates within established systems. The third kind is the justice-oriented, again similar to the transformative, someone who critically assesses the social, political, and economic structures. This citizen knows well about social movements and thinks of bringing about systemic change. Okay, the third scholar I'm introducing here is Kennedy. Kennedy focused on passive forms of citizenship. And these are citizens who are, for example, there are 2 kinds. One of them he named as national identity, and the second kind he named as patriotism. National identity, someone who knows well by heart the flag and the political offices, he has knowledge. Patriotism, someone who has unconditional support for the country, focuses on the values of loyalty, obedience, and social stability and hard work. So Kennedy describes these as low passive forms. So this is my study. I did a multi-site comparative study in 4 schools. The schools were public, experimental, as I told you before, these 4 different types. It was a qualitative study. I used a phenomenology approach. I did semi-structured interviews with 40 individuals, 28 students, 7 per school, and 14 staff members, 2 to 5 per school. I'm using a thematic analysis. So these are the 4 schools, and the first one is public school in the 6th of October. The annual fees are £80. And the second school is an experimental school, which is again a public school, but it's only the instructional language is in English. It's a little bit higher, 550 Egyptian pounds. And the private school is a French Catholic girls only school in Leopolis. And the international school is an international school in UK. Okay, and as you can see, the fees, they're increasing, and of course, all of these show the high differences of the difference of socioeconomic level. Okay, limitations I'll highlight. The first limitation is that during the public schools, some of the interviews were carried in a room with a social specialist. They told me you could have these interviews in this room. So the social specialist was continuously asking students to answer to in a certain way. So the student would say his opinion honestly. She would say, "Are you sure of this? You should change this answer." Of course, I wasn't sure if their answers were at the end of the day really their ideas, but I took it. The second limitation is in the international school. A very strange situation happened where the vice principal refused to allow me to carry face-to-face interviews. She asked me to let the students sit in a room during 1 hour break lesson and answer the answer on a piece of paper because she was afraid I'd influence their ideas. And I was really surprised this was the international school. The public schools were more open to allowing research. So findings, Again, in the thesis, I'm elaborating each school, the findings of each school, but for the sake of the time, I'm introducing a comparative analysis. So the first question, what notions of citizenship are being promoted by the 4 schools? Okay, so instead of focusing on citizenship education as a subject, I'm looking at different other issues. So I'm also looking at the understandings of teachers of citizenship. What do they think? What is citizenship and what is citizenship education? I'm also looking at structures for participation. So to what extent is this school really empowering students to have a voice, to make choices, to bring about change, to have a voice in academic issues. So this is a table showing the 4 schools and the various issues I'm exploring. First of all, the notions of citizenship by teachers. I found out that the public school and the experimental school, teachers had a patriotic understanding of citizenship. So when I asked them who is the good citizen, they would say it's someone who doesn't scratch the desk, someone who doesn't throw the litter, someone when he rides a bus doesn't scratch the wall. So this was their understanding. And someone who loves the country, someone who's loyal. The private school, the teachers were very committed. This is the French school. They were very committed and they had a mission of bringing about change and serving the country. The international school, it was really varied. So it appeared as if like each teacher would have an idea according to her or his discipline. So the community and service would say citizenship is about serving. The character education would say it's about character and so on. Concerning the subject of citizenship, which is مادة المواطنة, students at the public schools, they thought this subject is useless, it's not relevant, they couldn't remember the topics. And also they thought sometimes the teacher would tell them, I teach another lesson today, philosophy, because we're way behind in the curriculum. So it was really a minor subject, wasn't taken seriously. The third school, the private school, the teacher was very committed and very passionate. However, there was a problem in the curriculum. There was a problem in the curriculum is that the curriculum was really utopian. So it doesn't even mention the word Egypt. It says in good countries we have so and so. In good countries this should be the case. So students were like, okay, I really want to do something, but give me tools for action. So this is a problem. Even when the curriculum is there with a passionate teacher, this is a problem we face. Okay, structures for participation. Very quickly, the 2 public schools, there was a disrespectful attitude to students. I could always see students being humiliated, shouted at. Student council, there was a student council in each of the schools, but students didn't perceive there is a student council. Only a few who were participating knew this, but others didn't even know there is a student council. And I could see students escaping the schools, either in the corridors or in the streets. So when I was driving to the public school, I would see them 100 kilometers high. Okay, I'm getting close to the school. But this was the public school. In the experimental school, I could see them in the corridors, teachers shouting to them, asking them to go to class, and they would resist. The private and the national school, of course, they're very respectful, encouraging voice, they encourage the voices of students, and there's very effective participation. Now, concerning the activity in the local community, the public school, which is £80 a year, they thought like, we shouldn't serve the community, we're poor people, we need help. They didn't believe they should support the community in any way. The activities they had were seasonal trips. So for example, on the 6th of October, they have a trip to the panorama. On the 1st of April, they have a trip to the orphanage. So they were all seasonal, they weren't really sustainable. I think they were sustainable because of the never of course. Okay. So this is the public school. The experimental school, I was really impressed. There were lots of lovely activities. Yeah, I was really impressed. A school with £500 a year has such an array of activities, but they were all in an abstract manner. And also there is something which was very weird in the experimental school is that there are debates. They are allowed to carry out debates. However, you have debates and non-debatable issues. So debate, but don't. It's something we are really going to have a real debate. Don't debate it. Something else which was really weird in the experimental school is the idea of there was a journalism teacher. I was also very impressed. However, this teacher said we don't discuss politics. At the same time, I would find some photos or some posters talking about politics in a certain narrative. So to what extent is really there's a really open space for discussion. Talking about the private school and the international school, there was a lot of activities, charity, especially in the private school. It was really encouraging to have lots of charity activities. The students' ideas were really encouraged. However, if they were not outside of the box. So students would say something very weird. Once one of the girls told me, look, this school has been 100 years ago, so any weird idea, they don't accept. The international school, there were charity activities, but it was like once a year. So I was like, once a year is not really something which builds character or a sense of responsibility. It's only something which they celebrate. They also encourage students to make their own planning for trips and proms. So I felt, again, this is not really something which is influencing them like academic matters. And also the issue of the returning staff member, which I mentioned earlier. Okay, the second question I'm answering, what are the perceptions and actions of secondary levels students? Okay, the first finding I found in this, within each school, there wasn't only one type of citizen. All three kinds were within all schools, so this shows that one school does not really have a unified effect on students. This is the first finding. Second finding, teachers and students had resistance towards the narrative being promoted by the school. So not all students accepted the narrative. Okay? So very quickly, I'll show the kinds of citizens within each school. In the public school, I found two forms. Patriotic, some students were patriotic. Later on, I'll explain what do I mean by patriotic and their characteristics. And the second kind were very critical, however, they were inactive. And again, they think we're poor, we shouldn't serve or do any action in the community now. The experimental school, there were patriotic students, there were participatory students, and there were also critical students and active. However, active in terms of volunteering and charity, not really political engagement. The private school, I'm sorry, I missed a story here. There was a patriotic citizens, participatory, and I was very surprised that this was the only school that came up with justice-oriented citizens. And I'll elaborate on this more later on. And the international schools, two types of citizens, patriotic and critical, but again critical and inactive. And notice here the two schools which are similar, surprisingly, are public school and international school. These two schools didn't bring about civic engagement in students, and the only school with justice-oriented citizens are private schools. Now I'll very quickly show the characteristics of each type of citizens. So the patriotic, when asked about what are the local problems in the community, they either thought, well, actually, poverty, they perceived poverty as a problem, or they showed that they were really frightened due to ancient civilizations. Okay? The participatory would blame individuals, so they say people are barbaric, people are not following the rules, and the justice-oriented students, which are which I found only in the private school, they thought the problem in the community is the emotional masses. Masses do not really think, masses are brainwashed. They were highly critical to school curricula and to the media. Concerning the solution, the patriotic citizens or students weren't really motivated to bring about change. However, they expressed, I really like to care for the country. The participatory focused on charity and volunteering. The justice-oriented, one of the girls in the private school, she told me, when I asked her, do you have civic engagement at school? She told me no. So I was surprised. I told her, all of your friends are really happy with the activities. She told me no, we do charity. Charity is not civic engagement. This is something which is service. We should bring something about intellectual. Action, patriotic students showed to be inactive. So they did show to be loving the country, but they're inactive. Participatory focus on charity and volunteering, and justice-oriented, they focus on conscientization, which is a term Ferry uses, the idea of spreading social awareness as a major civic action. So students would say, I'm really reading articles and books and spreading awareness and so on. Research interests, the first kind didn't read, the second read novels, the third read in politics a lot, revolutionary articles and books. And the source of news, it's really varied, but there was a focus in these two kinds on adult figures and on the last two kinds on the internet. Okay, the third question, what are the effects of the various external socializing agents, family, peer, media, and daily events on the youth perceptions? First of all, I found out that the critical students within the 3 schools, or the 4 schools, they were really influenced by the daily events. And I'll highlight later on which school was influenced by which factor. But all of them were either influenced by the social media revolution or daily events. Parents, I found out that critical students had parents who were interested in following the social and political issues and also were open to discussions. On the other hand, the passive students, the parents either were not interested or they were imposing their ideas. Transformative students, a phenomenon that came up, they said we don't talk with our parents about issues because we always disagree, and they're being mainstreamed and they're listening to the media, and we don't think when we talk out we reach anything. Peers, I found out that critical students or active students were very highly engaged with their peers in discussion and civic activity. The internet was highly used by the critical students, and school, only 8 out of the 28 students highlighted that the school was an influential factor. Okay? Something that came up within the research is the influence of the socioeconomic level. So in the public school, the students were really influenced by their daily studies. So they were very afraid from unemployment, they were concerned with freedom of expression. In the experimental school, the students were concerned with the interpersonal discrimination. So they're facing so the experimental school, they had daily problems, but these problems were really things they were facing. The private school students, the middle class, these were the students who really were able to perceive structural problems. As I highlighted before, the emotional masses, the civic media, and school curriculum. The international school, they said they were really sympathizing with others. So they would say, I sympathize with others, with the other governors, because they're poor, they don't get appreciated, and so on. And others thought traffic and lack of luxuries as a problem. So I felt like the socioeconomic level does have an influence on the understanding. So general findings, schools A and B have a patriotic narrative. Students were resistant, but however, the students which came up were either inactive, or they're apathetic, or they volunteered, or they're waiting for action at the suitable time. School C, which is the private school, the teachers were very passionate. However, the curriculum doesn't have space for action. School D, in my thesis, I analyzed it as the neoliberal narrative, where students were very well prepared for the market, but they're not really prepared for the communities. Okay, conclusion, I'm almost done. I guess also all of these schools don't have a unified effect. I'll just skip to the other one because it's time. Okay, so this slide shows the obstacles to an effective citizenship education in Egypt. Okay, so we do have a curriculum, we do have student councils, we do have sometimes passionate teachers. However, first of all, culturally irrelevant curriculum, or the curriculum is not relevant to Egypt. It doesn't mention the current case of Egypt. Students said, tell me about the problems and tell me how to solve it. The curriculum is really abstract. The second problem is the lack of knowledge of channels for action. Third is the lack or false empowerment, either in public schools or international schools, because empowerment is all about proms and trips. Restrictions on discussion. All teachers said we are not allowed to discuss any political issues in the classroom since 2011. So one of the teachers in school C told me, how am I supposed to discuss citizenship without discussing politics? Model answers. In schools A and B, the public schools, there was this restriction of the model answers. Students were really concerned with writing answers that the teacher liked, and this hindered their freedom to answer. Last slide. This is a quote by Linda Herrera in 2012. She is highlighting that this wired generation, she calls this generation of the revolution wired because they're using the internet a lot. She said they really need to have critical tools in order to reach a democratic community. And this is my dedication of this thesis. I'm really dedicating it to justice-oriented, transformative citizens who give up an easy individualistic life for the sake of a more just world. And I'm really grateful to have many friends, some of them in this room and some of them outside for different reasons. So this is my dedication. And acknowledgements. I would really like to thank my mom for being my great supporter, and my dad, who's having a phone. And I'd really like to thank Dr. Malak for being a great advisor. I'm really grateful. And I had a previous study with an awful advisor, so I feel really Dr. Malak made it up for me. I really made use of everything in this school. I'd really like to thank Dr. Nashwa. I'm really blessed to have her as an advisor throughout the GSE, her courses, her opportunities to travel. I'd really like to thank Dr. Razan for her inspiration throughout the courses and all of the times, and Dr. Heba for her great courses, generally speaking, sustainable development. And her down-to-earth attitude and her lovely courses, really. I'd like to thank Dr. Jihan. The first course I took with her was with her. And I'd like to thank Yassine, because he came and gave up his PE lesson today because he got upset. And I'd like to thank all of my friends who were able to come here. and his main student. Thank you very much, and